Okay. Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes, it's now uploading from my end.
Okay. Not yet.
Yes, I can see it now.
Okay. Okay. I'll turn on my video. The challenge I have is that I have no power. See, here it's late.
Okay,
and that's a problem that we have. As we say, I was presenting, coming from the same country. There is a challenge with power here because of the issue of water. And because our electricity is mainly from the hydro, so because of we had the drought and we what we are able to produce from the water that we have is so we have the strain on the grid that we have. So we have a very long power blackout.
Okay,
so
that's fine. That's
immediately
fine.
when power comes, I'll be able to.
No problem. No problem. That's
Okay,
fine.
and that's affected part of my work. Thank you. This is a paper on understanding gender decision making on household cooking energy choice and the expenditure in Zambia. So it's similar to what Wiza was talking about, which is looking at the cooking energy choices, cooking energy solutions in Zambia. However, for her, it was more of an urban. This one captures even the rural areas where access to clean energy or modern energy is still very, very low. So basically,
yeah, Cindy, can you put your in a presentation mode for proper visibility? Yeah, I think if you go to full screen.
Okay, are you able to see? Because I'm using
yes.
I'm using a PDF, like I said.
Yes.
I had to
yes.
just be. Is it okay?
Okay. If you could put it in a full view.
Yes.
But you go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So it's on the issue of cooking, energy choice and expenditure in Zambia. So this study takes a gender approach where our main objective is to try and compare decision making on both choice and expenditure in Zambia. So that is basically what we are looking at here. So just to look at briefly access to cooking energy situation in Zambia, then gender and cooking energy in Zambia. Then we have the two methods that we'll be looking at, the gender indicators and then results and conclusion. So similar to what Wiza was talking about, Zambia is basically three as at now, because now we are also adding on the LPG, but basically the most common ones are three, which is the three cooking stoves and fuels that we basically use. So we have electric stove, which is basically the modern energy, the clean energy, which is given in the first picture there. Then we have the three stone stove, which is the wood fire. Then we have these two on the bottom here, which is the traditional Mbaula, as Wiza talked about. And then we have the improved Mbaula, some in different dimensions as Wiza talked about. So in this scenario, these are the three main types of cook stoves that we have. And as time looking at now, people now are adopting LPG, which is not so common, given that it's one of the imported type of energy and also cook stoves. So looking at those three types, then what we have are the, in terms of the access levels. We can see that Mbaula and the charcoal are the main type of cooking energy that is used in Zambia. So the blue represents the cooking stoves, and then we have the cooking fuel. So if you look at the Mbaula, as previously alluded to, uses mainly charcoal. So you can see that we have majority of our households in Zambia using charcoal as opposed to any other. And then, which is also the next is the 3 stone with firewood, which is also accounts for almost 40. So when you put the two of these, you can see that overall, we have almost 87% of our households or individuals in Zambia that rely on solid fuels, that is charcoal and firewood. So you can see that these two, especially the traditional Mbaula and also the first one, you can see that these are many inefficient cooking technologies. That is accounts for almost 90%. Then those that have adopted electric stoves are very few, and these mainly are in urban areas where electricity is found. So you can see that in terms of rural-urban disparities, we can see that only 2% of our rural households have access to clean energy. That is electric stove and other means of cooking energy. So majority of these individuals rely on these two model of cooking energy. Okay, so that is the scenario that we have. So what do we see in terms of gender? So we can see that in terms of Zambia, majority of the households that participate in cooking are mainly women. As you can see from here that 96.8, which is almost 97% of the women that is between 15 and above participate in cooking at least in a week, and 81% of these women cook daily. So meaning these are the highly affected individuals. So if you look at the men, only 18 of the men or the male members of the household participate in cooking, with majority of them not even participating completely, which is more like we can say that the cooking is an activity performed mainly by women. So in a household where they are adult women, the likelihood of them cooking on a daily basis is very high. Almost at least they will cook at least, unless otherwise there is something else. So you can see that even in time that they spend in the kitchen, is that on average they spend 10.6 per week compared to their counterpart, which is only 4. Similarly, that is even the lower age is also the same scenario. So what does that tell us? It tells us that these are individuals who participate mainly on a daily basis. They prepare, they cook, they provide food, meaning they have to have a say in whatever activities. They have to have a say in the quality, the type of cooking energy that they are supposed to. So what we are saying is that this exposes these women to tradition cooking energy. And it means that we have seen from literature that these tend to have an effect on their health, on time that they spend on cooking, and also it means it's constrained their time to engage in income activities and other productive activities. And also they suffer physical burden. As you can see, that majority of our household rely on a traditional energy, which is specifically firewood. So they have to collect that firewood and also do what? Cook. So meaning that process, the whole process from collection from the bush coming to cook and so forth has an effect on their livelihood. So if that is the issue, then who should be making the decision? Who should be the key individual in decision making regarding kitchen issues? And why should they be? So we know why they should is that these are individuals, especially when we look at it, these are individuals who are affected every day. So that's where now we, in this study, wanted to see how decision-making affect choice and expenditure of cooking energy solutions at household level. So we want to see in terms of policy debate on women involvement in decision-making and also other individuals within the household. And also to understand where power lies within the household in terms of choice and expenditure. And also to understand how effective are these indicators of decision-making that we'll be looking at. So, so it means that in the first stage, that is in our methodology. So what is it that we want to do? Like I said, we want to see, given that we have a group of individuals who are affected, to what extent and what indicators can help them contribute to using improved energy cooking. So in this case is that in the first stage, we estimate our probability model for the 3 different cook stoves. Why are we interested in the cook stoves? Is because we assume that, or we take it that the key decision that defines what you'll be using at household is deciding on the cook stove. So if you decide to take a traditional mbawala, it means that your type of fuel that you'll be using, or the type, is basically charcoal. If you decide to go for an electric stove as a household, it means that you should have electricity in your house. Or if you decide to go for gas, for a gas stove, it means that you should be able to afford that gas for cooking. So in this case, these two are things that are treated as complement. And for instance, household adopting electricity as a primary for cooking, have adopted the electric stove as a cook stove. So primarily, it means that the decision will be either to adopt the cook stove or the other. So in this case, we have one as improved cook stove or otherwise. So in this case, we have taken a probability model, and we also have going to estimate 3 models where we have improved cook stove, which is, in this case, we are saying the modern cook stove, which is electric cook stove. Then the transition, which is more of a traditional mbawala or mbawala stove. Then we have our fire stove, which is the 3-stone stove. So then in the second stage is that we focus on expenditure, where we want to estimate decision making and expenditure. And in this case, we apply the Ekman selection model. And in this case, we are looking at this because we noticed that from the study, we have households that didn't report their expenditure. These are households that are mainly not participating in the market, meaning those that I know are areas where they call and collect firewood. It means that it's very difficult to attach the price there and so forth. So in this scenario, it means that these households will are not reporting their expenditures as compared to those that go on the market, able to buy any type of cook stove or the fuel that they are supposed to use. So we use that, meaning in the first stage, we have the selection model, then we have the expenditure model. So that helps us in that scenario. So our data is coming from the MTF NH survey that was conducted in 2018 and has 3,612 households. And however, in this study, we are using the 2,900, where we focus on the household where at least have these individuals, male and female, because our focus is to see the household that has both male and female adults and see to what extent their presence affects decision in terms of cooking energy solutions. So, and that is what we are focusing on. So that is our data, and then we have several individual characteristics that are extracted in this model. So we have our, we have our gender indicators. So for female, we have social network, where whether this female household belong to at least a group where at least information about cooking energy and other activities, because we feel that women, as they interact with others, they are able to get new information about other cooking methods and cooking activities. So, or cooking energy that is maybe being introduced on the market, and they'll be able to see how best they can introduce them in their household. Then female participation in cooking. Then we also have female employment, economic activity, years of schooling, or what we refer to as educated female, those that have gone at least to secondary level education, which is also important. So we have the male indicators. So the male indicators also is similar to what we have apart from the social network, which is in our data for male was not there. So these are the four indicators that we have. That is social network, economic indicators, education attainment, participation in cooking. So for the first model, we have our marginal effects that we were able to estimate. So we can see that from this model is that social networking is key, relatively key in transitioning. Why among the female? Because they're able to go because of the information that flows across these women when they belong to these groups within, especially rural areas and also in urban areas. Information sharing is very, very important. So again, we see that female employment is also key for, is positive in choosing improved cooking stove, which is electric stove. If a woman or a female individual who is an adult and is working, they would want to make their life easy, and they would want to go for something that is better, that will reduce their time in cooking and be able to be more efficient. However, we can see a negative for the other two, which is in bowl and three stove, which is also significant in this aspect. Then education. Education is also seen to be an important indicator in this scenario. So education for female is very, very important. So because it has that aspect of, for those who are highly educated, the likelihood of getting good employment and so forth. But also, it also creates the level of understanding among these female about the benefits that they derive from introducing improved cooking modern energy. So for male, the male decision indicators, employment is also key. It has a positive effect. We can see that when we bring into self-employment and salaried employees, then we see that it has a negative for electric stove. However, it has for our key type of cook stove, we can see here that this is positive for men, similar to this. Why? Because Mbaula is taken as more of a transition or a middle, as we saw from Wizard's presentation. So, which is more of a bit cleaner, and it's more used among those households in urban areas. It's cheaper and more effective. So we can see that these are key indicators in terms of choice. Okay, so going to our second model, we can see that in terms of the average cooking fuel expenditure at household level, we can see that this is in kwacha at 10%, 10 kwacha per dollar. This is almost like $5 for those $5, those that are using firewood. And then charcoal, you can see that it jumps is about $15 at that time. Then electricity is the highest with $23. That is, I would have converted that at that time this data was collected. It was $1, 10 kwacha per dollar. Then this is the overall, regardless of the type of the cooking fuel that you pick here. So you can see that it lies within the here, which is $15. So we can see that household using clean energy spend at least 23 on average at household level per month for cooking fuel. So you can see that firewood is the cheapest for those that are buying. It's the cheapest, but it is not something that is efficient. And the average expenditure is about $15.8. Majority coming here, majority of those non-participants in non-market participants are those who use firewood, where we said it's 92.2%. These are the individuals who do not participate in the market. So meaning because firewood is mainly collected, and these are individuals that are not there. So you can see those from these two, maybe for charcoal, are those that are producing their own, while for cook stove, for electricity, maybe those that are paid for by other camp where they are working from, or the rent where the rentals are included, the electricity bills are included in the rentals. So again, we're able to estimate our Ekman selection model, and our key is just these decision-making indicators. However, sorry to say, is that there are other variables, household characteristics, individual characteristics that have been added, and I've not included them in this model due to time and also space. So we can see that our expectation is that when there is social, in terms of this decision-making indicators, like social, women's social networks, which is yes, we can see that there is a reduction in what? In expenditure. Why do we expect this? Is because of information sharing among and finding better ways among individuals. So they are able to find better ways of reducing expenditure on cooking energy. As you can see, majority of these are those households using clean energy, as opposed to those that are using traditional, which is clean energy, especially electricity, as opposed to firewood, which is the West in this scenario. So we can see that women, social network, and also employment all contribute to reduction in household cooking expenditure for cooking. That is in terms of the male employment. For female, we can see that this is not important. However, education is key. Those that are educated, those who have spent more time in school, in terms that it contributes more to expenditure. However, when we come to the ability to participate or their decision to participate in the market, we see that these are also key and they are positive, showing that networks, social network, belonging to a club or belonging to a group, or at least socializing within the community is key to them participating because of information sharing. Similarly, issues of education is also important among women. What we have for men is that education has a negative relationship, as we can see here, where we are seeing that instead of it discourages, it reduces the level of participation as opposed to individuals participating. Okay, so what do we see from this is that the policy should focus on closing that gender gap, as we can see from the beginning, from our introduction, by improving economic status and the education of those adult female, as these contribute to more improved decision-making at household level. So we can see that that is key in decision-making. And also, we observed that the unbalanced power observed through participation in cooking activities across gender at household level can be reduced if women are empowered economically, in terms of education, because at least they will be able to do better activities, and also through social network, where they will be able to find something better to do within that. Then equal opportunities across gender is promoted by SDG 5, and access to modern energy, as shown by SDG 7, are possible if the economic situation of the adult individuals, both male and female at household level, is improved. So those are the key issues that we got from there. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you. We are already 5 minutes into the discussion time. So Anadi, if you are ready, you can come in with your comments. Yes.
Yeah, hi Sydney. Thank you for this insightful presentation. I just had a few questions I wanted to know a bit more about. So your findings indicate different effects of employment status for men and women. Can you shed some light on what could be the potential factors in Zambia that might explain these gender differences? And I also wanted to ask about the social network that you said that it positively influences adoption of improved cook stuff. Can you talk about what specific aspects of these networks are most influential? For instance, if there are frequency of interaction or the kind of information that is exchanged, and what about when we contextualize it in terms of rural and urban settings? Is there any differences that maybe you can see? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I didn't get clearly on the issue of employment and gender. I don't know, maybe if you can repeat that question.
Okay, it's okay. You can proceed with the next one on social network.
Okay, so like I said, in terms of the social network, the specific issue, is that we, in terms of social network, is that whether this household, by definition, is whether this female household belong to some grouping, or at least within the community, especially those in rural areas, where we feel that information sharing is key. So the specific issue, especially when you are talking about information sharing, is that individuals or household or female households are able to get this information and maybe transmit it into the household. If the household head is the one who, the male is the one who makes the decision, there is that because they understand from their friends, they're able to see what their friends are doing and also what the benefits that they derive from improved cooking. Also, in terms of maybe where they can find cheaper sources of this energy, because energy solutions that we can talk about, like especially the cook stove and so forth. So that social network has an effect on the decision and also maybe on the best way to use this and reduce the cost. For those who are in maybe urban areas where new, like, I'll give an example of what Wiza was talking about. How do they reduce the cost? So there will be the issue of saying, okay, fine, we have a new baola that has come, we have a new type of cook stove that has come. It is cost effective. Like now, because of the problem of electricity, especially those using electricity for cooking, there is this influx of gas stoves that are coming up. So the social networks will be able to at least help people decide which one is better and so forth. Apart from, because others may not just go direct to a shop. Then I think the issue of rural-urban difference is key, like you have put up. We'll try and look at it to see if the data that we have can permit us to undertake to see the rural-urban difference. Yes, that's what I can say. Maybe on the first one, be able to respond.
Okay. Anadi, are you okay, or do you have further questions for Sydney?
No, I think I'm done considering the paucity of time for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other person? Okay, I can't see any comment in the chat. Yeah, I mean, Sydney, just a short one. So, I mean,
Okay.
if you look at, I mean, different few May and May indicators, I mean, in a regression, and let's say, for example, you find out that, I mean, education, female education and male education impact differently on adoption. I'm finding it hard to derive, you know, the implication of, you know, educational inequalities here. I don't know if you get my question.
Okay. Maybe is maybe the context that we the issue of education inequality between the two gender, the male and the female.
Yes. So, like, I mean, if you find out that, I mean, female education and male education impact, you know, differently on decisions, and then in your policy implication, you make a statement that we need to, you know, close this educational inequality gap. And I'm finding it hard to connect the two, because I think that the result may be speaking something different than actually inequality. Yeah.
Okay.
So that is just,
Okay.
I mean, you don't need to, okay, please go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. No. I understand.
Okay.
I just wanted to agree to what you are saying.
Okay.
Yes, I understand this.
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much, Sydney, for the
Thank you.
presentation. Yeah. So Anadi, we'll move to you next. Okay. So please, you can unmute yourself and start sharing your screen.
Is the screen visible and on full screen mode?
Yes.
Yes, very, very perfect.
Thank you so much. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Anandi and I am a PhD candidate at the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, India. And I'll be talking about the association between clean cooking adoption and women empowerment. And I'll be analyzing the social and economic dimensions through time use survey in India. So just to briefly go over the introductions, we all know that energy access is crucial in enabling income generating opportunities and socio-economic development for communities. Yet globally, over 2.5 billion individuals lack access to clean cooking energy. And in most communities, it is the women who bear the burden of energy poverty due to the arduous and time-consuming task of collecting and cooking meals using biomass fuels. This also leads to adverse health outcomes and limits their participation in economic and learning activities. So globally speaking, there is the Sustainable Development Goals, which are interconnected and urge collaborative actions across nations. SDG 5 and SDG 7 are crucial for the global south. And if you look at the Indian context, despite India's trajectory towards becoming a rapidly developing economy, universal access to clean cooking remains a distinct dream. And only 58% of Indian households use clean cooking fuel. And if we understand the rural-urban disparity, that's even higher in terms of cooking fuel usage, with 89.7% of urban households having access to clean cooking fuel compared to only 43.2% of rural households. Gender equality as a progress has also been slow in India. Only 69%, so 69% of women do not have schooling above class 10th, and almost 57% of women do not own a land or a house in the country. To understanding this linkages between gender and cooking energy, the government of India implemented the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. From here on, I'll be saying PMUI, which was launched in 2016 with the primary objective of enhancing LPG connections, specifically targeting women and socioeconomically marginalized groups. So if we have to understand the demand side challenges to LPG adoption, the major challenge is that of accessibility and affordability. In that fuel stacking, where LPG usage is limited to minor cooking tasks alongside traditional fuels, it remains prevalent in many households, especially in rural households, due to various socioeconomic factors. Users also exhibit price sensitivity to LPG. Whenever LPGs get expensive, it may drive up firewood consumption, leading to fuel stacking behavior. And despite an increase in LPG connections because of PMUI, we still have inconsistent utilization and refilling LPG cylinders remains a persistent challenge. So women's role in LPG adoption is cannot be sidelined because women are the primary stakeholders and they play a pivotal role in the cooking transition, as they are not only directly involved in cooking but also responsible for fuel wood collection in many households. Apart from that, there's also an impact on health and environment, for which LPG adoption is needed to mitigate health hazards posed by traditional cooking methods via household air pollution, which poses a higher risk to young children and women. There are also patriarchal limitations to women's decision making within households, which hinder the adoption of cleaner cooking fuels despite their numerous benefits. And it has been stated by studies that higher income and educational level in women significantly influence LPG adoption rate. And a major argument for LPG adoption has been around time saving, is that it reduces the time spent by women in fuel wood collection and preparing meals, and therefore frees up time for women, which they can then use towards income generating activities or for leisure purposes. So just to show how government initiatives are also trying to link to women empowerment, if you look at the right, uh, the PMUI objective is around the direct health benefits, as well as the LPG adoption can lead to reduced drudgery, as well as that it can lead to women empowerment. So my reason for studying time use is that this metric becomes significant in comprehending the gender division of unpaid and paid labor within households. And it's also a central argument for LPG adoption. However, time allocation as an indicator has comparatively received less attention in studies examining the association between fuel usage and empowerment. And my PhD as a topic aims to investigate if the usage of LPG is associated with income generating activities and an increase in social activities for rural women in India. The current study that I'm presenting limits itself to the descriptive analysis of states in India. So the methodology that I've used is the data source is that of time use survey done in 2019 by the Government of India. So it's a crucial repository of data regarding individual activities and duration spent on each activity. And there are it's a nationally representative survey which covers about 82,000 rural and 55,000 urban households. In terms of the data, what I've looked at is exploring activities as classified by the Time Use Statistics 2016. I'll further talk about it. The data population is that of top 5 biomass using states, as well as the bottom 4 biomass using states. And these are also the most populated states in India. And both men and women have been considered, grouped within the age of 6 to 14 years, 15 to 29 years, and 30 to 59 years. We have the statewide fuel use of India. It's Karnataka, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, which have the highest LPG usage, and Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, West Bengal having the low LPG usage and high biomass usage. I've also tried to use the PMUI LPG connections provided under PMUI to understand the states which have received the highest LPG connections, how are they faring in terms of their time use activities for cooking fuel. Other than Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, which have at least 8 to 10% usage of dung cake, my study is limited to firewood and LPG. So I'll just go one by one and start with the states with higher usage of biomass. So just to give an idea, the northern states such as Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal are the ones which have higher usage of biomass. So if you look at Uttar Pradesh, the percentage share of activities according to gender and age in household using firewood, we'll see that if you look at the employment and related activities, the purple one, we'll see that it is men in the age group of 30 to 59, which are which are spending most time in employment and related activities. And if we look at women, theirs is a MEAGAR at 1.6%. When we look at the unpaid domestic services for household members, we'll see that even for women who are in the age group of 6 to 14 years, it's higher than for men combined across all age groups. So for women, obviously unpaid domestic services is pretty high. And another interesting thing to note is that if you look at the self-care and maintenance, the gray bar, we'll see that women have spent at least 10% less time in self-care and maintenance as compared to men. If we look at the dung cake usage, we'll see some sort of similarity. Something that can be pointed out is that for men within the age group of 30 to 59, the highest time spent participation rate is at 20.6% in employment and related activities. And this is seen in urban households using dung cake. And similarly, if we look at urban women who are who are in households that use dung cake, they have the highest participation rate at 4.5%. If we move to LPG, we'll see that women who are in LPG households report in rural households using LPG report the lowest amount of employment and related activities. A reason could be that in the northern states, the households which have LPG are more affluent and are of upper caste society, and they are more orthodox, and they do not allow their women to work outside. And if we look at the urban households using LPG, we'll see that women who are in urban households using LPG report the lowest time spent on unpaid domestic services for household members. And this is seen across states. If we go to Bihar, we'll see that men who are in the age group of 30 to 59 years in urban households using firewood, they report the highest participation rate in employment and related activities at 21%. And similarly, if we look at the women at 3%, they report the highest. And by the way, Bihar also reports the lowest women participation in employment and related activities across all states. So just going to dung cake, we'll see that the unpaid domestic services for household members is quite high in rural and urban households using dung cake. If you look at rural households and urban households that use LPG, we'll see that the next percentage of men which are after firewood have the highest participation rate are the men in 30 to 59 age group and in urban households using LPG. Going to Rajasthan, in Rajasthan, we see that women who are in rural households using firewood note a higher participation rate than the women who are in urban households that are using firewood. This is also a trend that is seen across states in India, where rural participation amongst women is higher than urban participation in women. This is especially in the northern side, this is more common because women engage in agricultural activities. So that also leads to an increase in employment related activities. If we move on, we'll see that in terms of urban households using LPG, men within the age group of 30 to 59 report the highest employment and related activities. And we'll see that in case of unpaid domestic services, rural women having access to LPG are slightly better off than the women who are using LPG for cooking in rural households. Moving to West Bengal, we see that again in West Bengal, urban men who are in urban households using firewood report a slight higher participation rate in terms of employment and related activities in comparison to men in rural households that are using firewood. While for women, they have the highest participation rate in employment and related activities at 4.7%. When it comes to households that are using LPG, we see that again the women who are using LPG in urban households report the lowest time that they spend in unpaid domestic service for household members. Coming to Madhya Pradesh, we will see that in Madhya Pradesh, men in urban households using firewood, they spend somewhat similar time participating in employment, as we'll see for men who are in urban households using LPG. And women in both rural and urban households using firewood have similar rate of participation, around 5 to 6%. Yeah, again, if we see, it's at 19%, the highest. And as can be seen consistently, the self-care participation is low amongst women from the age group from 15 till 59. So coming to states with lower usage of biomass, here I've considered Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu. So there's a clear geographically division in terms of the northern and the southern state. So talking about Gujarat, we'll see that in Gujarat, men within age group of 30 to 59 years in both urban and rural households, if you see it in the LPG, we see that both in urban and rural households, they have the highest time in participating in employment and related activities. While if we look at the rural household participation again in LPG, it's at 7.42. And this is still higher for women who are in urban, who are in rural households and are using firewood. So again, consistent with the trend that rural areas, women in rural areas have a higher participation rate. If we move on to Karnataka, we'll see that men within the age group of 30 to 59 years in urban households using firewood spend the most time participating in employment and related activities at 22%. And women in the same age group in rural households have the same highest participation rate at 8.6%. The rural, if we look at this, we'll see that rural households using firewood in Maharashtra also spend the lowest time in self-care and maintenance in comparison to other states. So if you look at Karnataka's rural households that are using LPG versus urban households that are using LPG. The only difference that is high is to be seen, that is low is to be seen when it comes to the unpaid domestic services for household members. Women are considerably spending less time in terms of unpaid domestic services in urban households using LPG. While if we'll see that it's the women in rural households using LPG which are doing considerably better in terms of income and generating and other income generating activities. Coming to Maharashtra, again, it's somewhat similar. So I won't dwell on it much. And I'll just state that it's the men in the urban households using firewood, which have a higher percentage of employment, of participating in employment and related activities in comparison to men in rural households. And the similar thing is now seen in case of women also, that women have a higher rate of participating in comparison to rural households. And if we see the percentage over here, we realize that it is in firewood that women have a higher percentage of participation in employment and related activities. And we see that, yes, again, that the unpaid domestic services, for that women's participation has decreased. Coming to the last state of Tamil Nadu, we see that in Tamil Nadu, the women have the highest participation rate in rural households using firewood at 10%. And if we look at the households using LPG, urban versus rural, we'll see that it is in urban households using LPG where men have a higher income generating activities. So just to sum it up, because it might have been confusing, the overall men aged 30 to 59 have the highest participation in employment activities, the highest being in Karnataka at 22%. And the participation rate in employment is high in men from urban households using firewood, in many states having higher usage of biomass, except Rajasthan, where we see that the participation rate is higher in households that are using LPG. Overall, women in states having higher access to LPG exhibit notable employment participation rates. So they are doing much better than the states that have low access to LPG. But again, the higher percentage is more in the rural areas than in the urban areas. So women in states having higher access to biomass also have lower participation rate in employment activities. So the lowest being in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, around 3 to 4%. And unpaid domestic services see the highest participation among women using firewood in rural areas, particularly in Bihar and Gujarat. The major conclusion that can be drawn is that urban women using LPG spend the least time in unpaid domestic services, but whether that the time that is getting freed up is being used for income generating activities or for social activities has to be explored further. And women aged 15 to 59 spend significantly less time in self-care. So, in conclusion, I would like to say that women, particularly in rural areas and households using traditional fuels, face disproportionate time burdens on unpaid domestic chores. And the transition to cleaner cooking fuels like LPG presents an opportunity to alleviate their burdens. But providing LPG connections in silos, I feel, as the current scheme can only provide a short-term solution. And if we need to get some sort of long-term solution and empowerment, schemes such as PMUI need to collaborate with other social schemes that are targeting women. And moving forward, I'd just like to say that this is part of my second research question as a PhD topic, and it's mostly on secondary data analysis on income generating and social activities and LPG usage in rural women. And I'll also accompany it by a primary fieldwork in Uttar Pradesh, since it is the it is the most populous state in India, and it also is the highest beneficiary of the PMUI scheme. And my study will also be targeting women beneficiaries of PMUI to understand the association between LPG usage and socioeconomic independence for the most vulnerable group. Thank you. If anybody wants to connect, here's my writing.
Okay, thank you, Anadi, for the presentation. Sydney, we are already 5 minutes into the discussion time, so please keep it very brief and direct.
Okay. Okay. So the first one that I had was just an observation on the age groups that you created. I noticed the 6 to 14 years, and then going up. I just wanted to find out what informed that age categorization. Is it I don't know what I can say. Maybe what informed you to say, okay, we are going to have 6 to 14, or is there any legal aspect that is there? Then the second is observed in terms of the legal employment age. I think looking at 6 to 14, these should be children that I feel maybe their age is low to engage in any meaningful employment. So maybe trying to, as you are looking at those shares in terms of age, it may have maybe seemed to be very low because they are children. Then the other one is just understanding, because you were just looking at the share as in terms of percentages and so forth, and making that conclusion from there. I thought maybe to what extent does those because what is missing there is to understand the extent to which these are affected, like for example, employment, care and self-care and maintenance that you are looking at. I thought to say maybe using another method to try and see the extent this can be is affected is also can, apart from just getting the shares. And also to see maybe there would be other factors that would affect the time used other than just the use of these fuels that we are looking at, the LPG, firewood, and so forth. So meaning you can control for other factors and so forth. Yes. So yeah, for now I'll end there. Yes.
Yes. So I'll just quickly respond. In terms of the age category, to standardize it, I took it from the time use survey report, the way Government of India has decided to has decided to differentiate between, categorize the age groups. So that is from where I used the 6 to 14, 15 to 29, and 30 to 59. And no, I completely agree with you over that this might be a bit short-sighted to draw conclusions from just some descriptive statistics and percentage share. I will be doing a regression analysis and other secondary data analysis to further look at the correlation and arrive at conclusion. Yeah, and thank you. I'll also look at other factors that can be controlled for the same.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the participants? Okay, so thank you very much, Manadi.
Thank
okay.
you.
So we move to the next presenter, Rishab. Yes. So please go ahead and share and unmute your mic as well.
Of course. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'm looking at the time. Hopefully this won't take too long. I'll start off by saying that, yeah, it's an honor to be here. I think my presentation is a little bit different. It is not addressing specifically gender or the impacts of new fuels and household cooking. It's more so looking at a broader analysis of energy transitions in relation to large-scale infrastructure. So I'll just set up that as a primer, as well as the fact that for this presentation, I think I'm going to be focusing more on the story and the framing of these issues rather than the specific nitty-gritty of results, because I think that is more applicable to the idea of sustainable energy transitions and what we're all focused on. So just take that. Today, I'll be talking about a specific policy in Colombia called prior consultation or consulta previa. And I'm going to be analyzing how this policy relates to the building out of wind energy infrastructure in a specific region of Colombia called La Guajira. The first thing I'll say is that this picture on the right is really important to me. It represents a signing an agreement between indigenous peoples, the government, and companies in Guajira for a just energy transition. As an agreement on paper written between these three parties saying that we want to do this the right way. And so the point of this analysis is not to say that we need to have a just energy transition. It's to say that we're already having these discussions and what are the policies in place that are trying to facilitate those. So first, a little bit of a disclaimer. I am not from Colombia. Do not claim indigenous heritage from the region I'm analyzing. So I just want to put that out there. But I do think this region is very important to analyze because a lot of the dynamics that we see are broadly applicable to just energy transition regions across the global south. The second thing I'll say is that I think from a lot of these panels, I've gathered so much valuable information about the importance of the technical how, which is, okay, we have a bunch of technologies, and how do we make sure that consumers change to those technologies? How do we make sure that we can use the right economic incentives to, say like put a carbon tax or leverage finance? These are really important questions of the how we're going to do the energy transition. And I'm more focused on while we're doing the how, while we're figuring out the technology, what does it look like to work with people on the ground, to get buy-in from people that are affected by all these decisions? And what I would define that as is a just transition. So a lot of us focus on distributive justice, which is what are the benefits that people receive from energy transitions, such as from cleaner fuels in terms of air pollution effects, or the injustices that happen with the use of fossil fuels, such as a coal plant that pollutes. And that's really important to analyze. But what I'm focused on more in this analysis are the other components of just transitions. Procedural, which is how do we include people in decision making? Recognition, which is what does it look like to consider different value systems when we're looking at policy from one lens and then community dynamics from another lens. And then finally, restorative, which means that we're analyzing all of these policies with the context that there's history and with the context that there's distrust between people, and that in order to facilitate a just transition, you need to make sure that you understand how to include people and how to include people's histories. So here's the context. Guajira is a department in the northeast of Colombia, as you see with my mouse here. And what's really important about it is its geography. Bogota, Medellin, Cali, what you associate as Colombia and the Colombian economy, that's all occurring hundreds, if not thousands of miles away. And so when you think of Guajira, you have to think of it as its own country. The geography is also very important because it is the sunniest and windiest place in Colombia, maybe even Latin America, except for Chile. And it also has a bunch of mineral deposits that have been exploited in the past and provide a lot of revenue to the people of the region. The other thing that's important about the geography is the specific distance from the city centers of Bogota and other cities. Unlike those cities, most of Guajira, a little over 50%, is inhabited by indigenous peoples, the Wayuu people, which this green reservation area shows. And the Wayuu people have a much different value system than a lot of Colombians. I could spend this presentation talking about one of the traditional components of a just energy transition, which is coal, because this specific region is the largest coal exporter of Latin America. And this area, which I'm pointing out with my mouse right here, is home to one of the largest open pit coal mines in the world, which has provided a lot of the revenue for the region and for Colombia, but also caused the displacement of people, water pollution, air pollution, and a lot of associated negative impacts. But I'm not talking about coal. I'm going to be talking about wind, because within the specific region, the Colombian government, multinational companies, they're all rushing in and trying to work with these indigenous communities to build wind. Because if you see these red areas and these blue areas, those are proposed wind plants because it's so windy. And what they're saying now is we're not going to replicate the problems of the past with coal. We're going to do this the right way. The Colombian government vows that Guajira and the Wayuu people are going to be the center of a just energy transition. So how are they going to do that? The specific policy that I analyzed was a policy of consulta previa, or prior consultation. And it's a pretty simple policy, written in international law and adopted by the Colombian Constitution, as well as many other countries in Latin America. It essentially says that the people affected by policy, by these large-scale systems of policy and infrastructure, should be given the right to express their concerns, express what they want and desires, and ultimately just be a part of participating in the construction of policy implementation. So I'll give you the example of wind, because that's the point of my analysis. With wind energy, an energy company comes in, usually a multinational one, and it says, okay, this is a very windy region. We want to build renewables. But what they have to do first is go to the area where indigenous peoples are, so these Wayuu people, and begin a series of consultations with them, asking questions such as, what are your concerns about the project? What benefits do you want out of this project? What do you envision development looking like as we build these wind turbines? And the belief is that these Wayuu people are able to participate in a way that benefits them, while it also provides electricity to the city centers of Bogota, and while it contributes to the broader climate goals of Latin America. It's a very strong legal framework, and Colombia is one of the leading countries on it, so a lot of people look to it as an example. It sounds perfect, but I'm not focused on the policy itself, but rather the implementation. Because while it seems perfect on the surface, there are many problems. And my research question essentially looked at these problems between the theoretical protections, what is provided in law by the state and by companies to protect communities, and what are the lived realities of these community members. And in order to advance that, I use the following methods. So first, what are these theoretical legal protections? After conducting a literature review of the most important documents, I began an emergent thematic coding process where I used documents such as the ILO Convention 169, the Colombian Constitution, and other important handbooks and rule books to essentially see what does the Colombian government promise to these indigenous peoples and to anyone involved in negotiations. with my mouse, you can see there's many categories. They promise that you have to respect the right of people to collective ownership over their lands if they live on a territory, or that you have to address health disparities when you're building project. There's many requirements within Consulta Previa that lay out the process by which Consulta should begin and end. And so once I had that code book, initial code book of 76 codes, essentially laying out the protections, I then started my second process, which is the deductive coding of 7 interviews conducted by my fellow researchers in Wajida with community members. And these interviews were semi-formal, qualitative. And what I looked through in the transcripts was, how do people think about the protections that they're offered? What do people think about the right to collective ownership? Do they feel that they're given adequate access to information, that they can participate, that they're meaningfully engaged with? And so if you look at these theoretical protections and you look at these lived experiences, you should be able to see which parts of Consulta are being respected and implemented the right way, and which ones are being questioned by the community members affected by it. Finally, for simplicity's sake, I created a series of meta-categories to capture all of these codes, which are the affirmation of Indigenous rights, benefits for communities from projects, the conditions under which you need to begin a Consulta Previa process with communities, the specific requirements within the process, and finally, who is responsible, the state, companies, and for what. And the results were the following: that although the protections are very strong, there are a lot of discrepancies. That for example, affirmation of Indigenous rights, while the Colombian government promises to respect the rights to collective ownership, they don't necessarily respect the benefits that come with that. So for example, if you're an Indigenous population, you typically associate the right to collective ownership with the right to self-determination, that your community should be able to decide what path of development you want. And as part of that, be able to veto a project and have your consent instead of just being consulted. But as the analysis shows, many community members expressed that they didn't feel like this was actually occurring, that the state used this process without actually respecting their right to say no. And you can see this across the line, that oftentimes community members felt that there wasn't enough time, information, that the state chose the wrong leaders to talk to during these consultations and during these meetings, that the companies themselves weren't acting in good faith. Rather, they were acting as transactional partners. And that overall, the process of Consulta Previa, which is meant to improve outcomes and development outcomes for the YU people, actually increased social inequality. So if I was to wrap this up in terms of results, I would have to say that there's 3 main culpable actors: the companies, the states, and the communities themselves. According to community members, the companies that are coming in from America, Europe, even some of the Colombian companies, they don't understand the process of Consulta Previa. They see all these legal guidelines and they're paralyzed. And the state itself, which has a ministry of Consulta Previa and has ministries of the environment, doesn't provide support to these companies or communities. Second, that community members feel that the process, the specific process of Consulta Previa in terms of this meeting, this meeting, this meeting, they want more information and they want more abilities to participate. They feel that the consultation is a facade, that they're being consulted but not actually listened to, and that it's a checklist. But finally, you can blame the state and you can blame companies, but there also is blame to put on community members, because during consultations, a lot of people assume that all these communities are in agreement of something or against something, but there's conflict within communities. What if someone wants the plant and wants to be compensated by the owner of the plant, Well, another person is worried that their grazing of their animals is going to be affected, or that their spiritual remains of their ancestors will be disturbed. How to negotiate that conflict within communities? Right now, the system that communities have of participating is electing leaders that are traditional leaders. And within this, there's a lot of corruption and resentment. So what does a better process look like according to community members themselves? For companies, there's an essential ask for good faith. One person I remember I talked to just wanted to get a cup of coffee with companies instead of just being treated as a business partner, because relationship building is incredibly important to community members in this region. For the state, returning back to the geography, this place is very far away from Bogota and most of what we consider Colombia. And so there's this distrust between the population and the national government. And so they are asking the national government to participate more, to come into their spaces and get to know the people. And also understand that instead of just being consulted by the policy, giving the opportunity for these communities to say no. That's a really important distinction. Consultation versus consent. And that will continually to be negotiated in further years. And finally, this overall belief that the process is indignified, that it's a checklist of items conducted by companies in the states in order to advance something. And this is all important because within the area of just transitions, there's immediate implications for Guajira and also the world. In current terms, the energy plants that are being proposed are being resisted by community members. That on that slide where I proposed all of the plants that are upcoming in construction, they're being delayed. Companies are leaving because they don't believe that they can work with these indigenous populations. And what does that mean? It means that in Colombia and maybe even the world, we're not going to meet our climate goals because we're not building fast enough. So we do need to figure out a better process of listening to people on the ground. Second, that Guajira is one of the poorest regions of Colombia, has one of the highest levels of multidimensional poverty, of gender inequity, of social education problems. And they don't even have electricity in most of the regions. Yet a lot of these companies are coming in and proposing to build energy plants in their lands and then transmitting electricity right over their lands to the city centers. So as we're talking about this idea of development, we can't just talk about providing the needs of the urban populations, but also understanding what rural people want. They want to be able to participate. They want the electricity that's coming from the sky above them in wind turbines. And as these processes continue, they hope that the state and companies start to understand those. But finally, for the world, what does this mean? Well, there's two things I'll throw out. First, the idea of multicultural participatory democracy. That there's a lot of problems with consulta previa, but it's also an opportunity. Whereas in the past, with the coal mine and with many projects across the world, populations are simply built over, they're not listened to, and you end up with some people benefiting, but a lot of people not benefiting, a lot of people losing their lands. But consulta previa and processes like these offer an opportunity for people to participate and express different values, to have different value systems. Indigenous values are different from most Colombian values, and to say that they want to be part of the process. And so I would encourage future energy development in Colombia and across the world to see this participation of democracy over capital itself as a good sign, even if it's a little slower and even if there's friction. And then finally, returning back to the graphic I had about just transitions, that we don't just talk about distributive justice and the benefits that community members receive from something such as wind energy. Yeah, it's important that community members can gain electricity from these projects, but it's also important that they're given the political capacity to participate. That a lot of times well-being is not just something that is material to these community members, but something that is political something that involves participation, and as a few political theorists say, enhances the community capabilities, the capabilities for communities to decide their own right of development. It is not my job as a researcher to say that we need to build more wind or that we shouldn't to listen to Indigenous peoples. But I think we should be looking at this as an ongoing process that shows that if we are to build wind energy or renewable energy, we can't just do it over the lands of people. We have to do it with them. So I wrote this as my undergraduate thesis. So it's just the beginning of my research, but I'll just end by saying that I get to go to Wahida in July, so in a few weeks to start my official research for the next year. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Richard, for this wonderful presentation. So, Wiza, if you are ready, please, can you come in with your discussions? Yes.
Yeah. Rishabh, I enjoyed listening to your presentation. You're very eloquent, so that also makes it really interesting to, made me stay, listening to what you were saying, and very clear. This is a very new concept to me. So I did find it very interesting how some of your conclusions, especially around understanding the indigenous people's needs with regards to any project, be it energy or any other projects that might come into their land, is key. And respecting those their needs and what they would want to realize from the project is key. And I kind of see that similarity in my project as well, where in my case, it's a focus on the design. Perhaps if the users of the stove are more participating in the focus of the design, we can get a better outcome. So I think the centerpiece is who is the user, what is their involvement in this whole process called prior consultation. Okay, so that said, I wanted to find out what approach did you use to get interviewees to participate and express themselves freely, particularly that you are not from that culture, I believe. So was there a planned strategy as to how you'd get, is it the way you, people to participate and freely open up to you on some of the challenges they face with prior consultation? The second question is, what do you think from your findings? We're talking about research, research speaking to policy here. And you have these incredible outcomes on what some of the deficiencies are in this consultative process. So what would be the most effective way of making your findings action points towards improving the process of prior consultation in Colombia?
Yeah, thank you for those questions and comments.
Yeah.
So the interview process, the short story is that I was not able to conduct the interviews myself because the region is a conflict zone next to the border of Venezuela. So I was not able to travel. Now I'm able to travel, but my research mentors were able to conduct interviews broadly on the topic of just transitions. So they weren't necessarily interviews on consulta previa, but rather just transitions in general. And within those interviews, I looked at the specific data points that involve consulta previa. In terms of trust and mistrust, yes, a lot of these community members do have a fear of being persecuted by the coal companies and the government and energy companies. So all the data was anonymized and all direct identifiers were removed, which gave a lot of people more freedom to actually express their views. And I hope that if I travel there, I will continue those processes of protecting people's information. But I think that's how we got good data. I will say that this is qualitative data, and my specific outcomes may be different from other researchers, and it's also a small sample size. But yeah, that's the answer I'd say to the first question. For the broader implications of research to policy, that is the question I'm asking myself as I travel there in in a month. If I was to say one thing that is applicable, there's a really important need that policymakers need to address to directly provide more avenues of participation and information, specifically using digital tools. So a lot of my fellow researchers are trying to work with policymakers to see if we can help community members see the actual financials of energy plans and see if they can negotiate better by having more information when they come to the table. So can they get access to the financial plans of the company? Can they get access to GIS maps of where the actual projects would occur? Right now, there's a huge power imbalance in who holds information, and we think that digital tools and providing community leaders with these tools is one way to immediately improve what's going on. But yeah, I'll see what happens when I actually get there and see how things improve or degrade.
Interesting. Thank you. Wish you the best.
Okay, thank you very much, Wizzy. Any other comments from the participants? I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I think I'm right to say.
Can I?
Yeah, okay. Okay, Luis.
Hi, Rishabh. Thank you for your presentation. It was really interesting. I have a couple of reactions or questions. First, my first question would be like, how in advance are these consultations done? The previa or consulta previa. I mean, how long in advance before the projects happen, and if they are actually taken into account, or they're just like a checkbox in some sense. So one of the concerns that has happened with minimum of consultation in COP and in many places is the fact that sometimes like they arrived once they have the project already ready, and they just show it to the community and try to get some support of some of the leaders, and then that's